of your best moment of the day or your best idea. Here's the worst idea of the day. I have, anyway. They're not bad ideas. Here's one that's particularly bad. From a Belgian, of all people. Telling you that conflict works. Look at Belgium. One can't come to Holland and not make a Belgian joke. I don't know what you say in Belgium about the Dutch, but that's another subject. So, I titled my talk, Be Unhappy. We had a choral moment at the beginning where you all stood up and pretended to be happy, some of you probably were. Only in Holland, with your deeply religious past, do you manage to secularize religion in the celebration of happiness. But of course, I'm in the business of unhappiness. I make my living through talking and selling unhappiness, which makes me very cheerful. Maybe not everyone. So I have two reasons for you to be unhappy today. The first is that you're not very unique. You're told in these kind of events that we've got to be special, we've got to be unique and disruptive and innovative and the blah blah kind of 21st century new business dogma. You're all special, you will pay your $80 to hear this originality, you will define yourself as tedsters, all the rest of it. But of course at the beginning today, what did we hear? We heard that while this is going on, 8 other TEDx events were going on around the world. Now, I worked that out, you've got 8 or 9 a day. That's over, I think, I'm not very good at math, but that's like 5,000 TED events a year. This then is the new orthodoxy. There's nothing really innovative about these kinds of events, and there's nothing really innovative about the values, the discourse, the ideology being presented. Now I like this event. It says every system has rules and values to follow. We're seeing a shift in systems. But here's the really bad news. The really, really bad news is that the new system that's coming into being, the shift from an industrial 20th century hierarchical mass organizational society, which certainly isn't ideal, although every speaker so far has taken swipes at it and blamed everything from the collapse of the environment to the crisis of the individual. I'm not necessarily idealizing the old world, although I think throughout the 21st century we're going to become more and more nostalgic for a mass society, for a hierarchical society, a society where we knew our place, a society of organizations rather than individuals. But the really bad news, and I hope I'm the first to tell you, is that this new world that's coming into being, whatever you want to call it, digital society, the innovation age, the age of disruption, the information age, is worse. It's a lot worse. We could be 150 years ago at the beginning of the industrial age. Now, the industrial age didn't work out ideally. I accept the idea that the industrial age in many respects wrecked the economy. But it also brought such things which I think we could all celebrate as democracy, individual rights, a general level of prosperity never seen before in human history. So before we trash the past, before we write it off, before we think we're all so clever and look back at these generations who have supposedly screwed up, let's look at this world that's coming into being. We're told to be brave. These are the sections. Be brave, be bright, be true, be social. These are the ideological underpinnings, the pillars of this new world. The idea of being brave, of course, in our post-warrior society is not about throwing bombs, not about going into battle, but about challenging orthodoxy. As the famous Apple commercial said, think different. That's the new orthodoxy. You're told in this world to challenge everything. No. But brightness has become the differentiating factor of this new age. Brilliant economist in America, a guy called Tyler Cowen, wrote a very, very important book last year called Average is Over. We're living in a world where there's a tinier and tinier elite of bright people who are reshaping everything, who are garnering resources, who are becoming rich and powerful. You can see it in the way in which power is distributed on Twitter or on Facebook. Pareto talked about the 80-20 rule. It's increasingly the 99.9% rule. The world that's coming into being, and we can't blame everyone for this, is all about inequality. In our information age, those who are informed are a tiny, tiny minority. They're the ones with power and wealth and influence. They're people like you, they're the people who go to the tedx. But the middle is disappearing. The old middle, the mass society of 20th century industrial life is going away. Inequality is rife in economic and cultural terms. It's one of the great ironies. We were promised about this information digital age and it would make us more equal. The truth is it's made us more and more unequal. Be true. One of the most appalling things I've ever heard. Be true. What does that mean? Be true to what? Be true to yourself. The dreadful ideology of authenticity. I've already heard that word. It's pornography to me. It's a disgusting word. What does it mean? To be true to oneself means there's some absolute truth about oneself, which of course never exists. It's only for the indulgent. It's for the Arianna Huffingtons of the world to tell us how to be authentic. Anyone who uses the word authenticity is by definition inauthentic. Which is why I don't use the word. Be true. I'm not saying be truthful. It means be passionate. It means express yourself. It means coming to events like this and spewing out your soul, confessing your feelings. It's not about being truthful. What we're seeing, and I wrote about this in some depth in my book, Cult of the Amateur, we're seeing the death of curators, of professionals, of people who stand between all of us and media. Everyone on the internet is true. Everyone is expressing themselves. Everyone is trying to be authentic. Of course, the more they try to be authentic, the less authentic they actually are. Truthfulness is disappearing. We have less and less objective fact. People know less and less. So being true makes us more ignorant, more indulgent. It represents a retreat into the self. And the irony of this new world is that we're supposed to be social. We've heard about social entrepreneurs and social this and social that, social networks, social awareness. Another of the great myths of what's happening. The social is an ideology. The reality of this world is we're more and more fragmented, isolated. We are more and more individualized. It's Durkheim on steroids. Durkheim worried about anarchy at the beginning of the 20th century, the beginning of the 21st century. We're more and more isolated. We use social networks and social apps and this kind of social or that kind of social to simply reflect ourselves. So being social is actually fragmenting us. Being true is resulting in a kind of intellectual poverty, in ignorance. Being bright is resulting in inequality. Being brave is resulting in the destruction of an old economy and the appearance of new companies like Google or WhatsApp, which was worth $19 billion and employed 30 people. That's why you should be unhappy. Even if you don't live in Belgium, you should be worried about the future. Enough Belgian jokes, right? I was there last week. They'll never let me back in. Although I'm sure they don't have bodyguards, right? Because nothing works there. So how do we behave in this new era? We're supposed to have come here to get an education in behavior, in knowing how to behave. The first thing, of course, is to question everything you hear, even what I said at events like this. We collectively need to reinvent the idea of authority and trust. We need to figure out, in our innovation economy, in this disruption economy, those things are all very well, and maybe they're true, but we're breaking everything. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was a philosopher who used the metaphor of a tree to say, we were in the business of breaking off the branches, of sawing off the branches. And the more branches we sawed off, eventually the tree would collapse. We're at that point now in our supposed disruption, innovation economy. More and more unemployment, more and more inequality of wealth, less and less respect for institutions, for politicians, for systems. We've broken the old world, the old industrial world, but we haven't really figured out what's going to replace it. Something will. We're still in the 1820s or 30s, but we shouldn't be confident about what's coming into place. Thomas Piketty, the French economist, just wrote about this remarkable inequality now, which is destroying our world. These are things that we need to bear in mind. We must resist the cult of disruption, of innovation. It's not always good. Being bright. We all want to be bright. But we need to understand that average is over is bad news for 95% of people. As machines do work, as tinier and tinier companies take more and more power and wealth, what becomes of the average? Because not everyone can be bright. Maybe the people who come to TED can be bright, but most people out there in the street aren't bright. They're average. Average is true of the human condition. For better or worse, you can come to as many TED events as you want, but if you're stupid, you're stupid. Be true. Here's the best advice. Learn how to lie. Learn how to tell untruth. Never utter the A word, and I will never say that word again in public. It's an ugly word, a pornographic word. Learn how to curate yourself, but don't tell the truth. Treat yourself as a narrative, as a piece of fiction. Retreat from this confessional culture, which we are all falling into, in which we tell the world everything about ourselves. Be truthful rather than true, and recognize in that truthfulness that often you're ignorant, that you know less than you think, and that you're better off learning from others. Finally, on the social front, this is the most corrosive idea of them all. We are, by definition, when it comes to innovation and disruption, best off on our own. Don't be seduced by the idea of the social. In our age where everything is seen, we've seen the NSA, panopticon-style culture we're falling into, a world where we're being watched on all the social networks, where we are being turned into the product by dominant companies like Google and Facebook. We need to learn how to be alone again. Every time I come to Holland, and I ended my book, Digital Vertigo, in Holland, in the Rijksmuseum, I go and see Vermeer's Woman in Blue. A woman who was content on her own.